Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Far Above Rubies. Today we are taking a look at the miracle of bitter waters turning sweet. Your reading challenge for today is going to be Exodus chapter 15, verses 22 through 27. We're going to read together 22, 23, and 25 from the Message today. That's not our normal translation, and so that's why I'm sharing that with you. They read like this: Moses led Israel from the Red Sea to the wilderness of Shur. They traveled 3 days through the wilderness without finding any water. They got to Marah, but they could not drink the water at Marah, for it was bitter. So Moses cried out in prayer to God. God pointed him to a stick of wood. Moses threw it in the water, and the water turned sweet. This is a very simple miracle. In fact, I'm sure that many of us at some point or another in reading the book of Exodus have skimmed over this miracle and kept right on going without even pausing to consider what God did for the people here. They had been traveling through the desert, hundreds of thousands of people, for 3 days without finding any drinkable water. The first water that they come upon is bitter. It is not good for drinking. And they begin to complain to Moses and say, what are we going to do? And we mock the people of Israel for that complaint. But if you're carrying your baby on your side and you've been traveling for 3 days through the desert and the first water you come upon is undrinkable, I bet you'd have a complaint or two as well. The people of Israel could not see past the bitterness in front of them. But God turned bitterness into sweet, life-giving sustenance. What a miracle. What a miracle to turn bitterness into sweetness. And if you've ever struggled with bitterness, you know it is a miracle for bitterness to turn into sweetness. Bitterness creeps in for us all at some point or another in life. You might think a super Christian person may never deal with bitterness in their whole life. But the truth of the matter is that as Christians, we all deal with hurt and pain and betrayal, and those are the seeds of bitterness. If we allow them to grow, if we allow them to go unchecked, if we allow them to take up root in our heart and not give them to God, then they can and will turn into bitterness. We have to allow God to take control when we begin to see bitterness in our lives. We have to allow Him to replace bitterness with sweet, life-giving sustenance. It was when Moses cried out to God that healing for the waters came. They could have looked bitterness in the face all day long. They could have stood around the waters of Marah going on and on and on to Moses, never taking a breath in their complaints and their grumbling. But if they had not turned to God, if Moses in wisdom had not turned to God in that moment, sweet relief would have never come. Life would have never been given into the situation. And so, as simple as this thought is, I'm going to ask you this question: will you die in your bitterness? Or will you give it to Jesus? Sometimes we become so well acquainted with the bitterness in our hearts that we don't want to let it go. It has been our longtime companion, and we know bitterness, and we can trust what bitterness is going to do. It's predictable, and we have a hard time letting it go. But bitterness will kill us. If the people of Israel had drank the waters of Marah, it could have well killed them. It was not good for drinking. But when God gets involved, when God puts His wisdom into bitterness, when He puts His say-so into bitterness, it can be transformed into something beautiful and sweet and life-giving, never to be bitter again. So will you die in your bitterness? Will you be consumed by it? Will you keep your focus solely on bitterness? Or will you be like Moses and instead of just complaining, look to the Lord and say, God, we need help. I need help. I need you in my life, my heart, and my situation, and I don't want this bitterness anymore. God can then bring sweet relief where bitterness once stood. I hope that you'll go and read this beautiful, simple miracle today, that you'll dig into it, that you'll pray through it, and ask the Lord if any roots of bitterness have taken up residence in your heart or your life lately. If you've been through a hurtful situation or a season of betrayal in your life, with a fine-tooth comb, go through your heart and ask the Lord to help you. Go read Exodus chapter 15, verses 22 through 27 today. And if no one has told you lately, you are loved and you are cherished and you are valuable. You have beautiful and tremendous worth, my friend, and that worth is far above rubies. Thank you for being here today, and I will see you all again tomorrow. God bless you.